many scholars and many people, they just gloss over. But this was something that Rasulullah ﷺ did in Makkah. We already know about the mu'akhat and establishing the bonds of brotherhood in Medina. So the bonds, the mu'akhat of Medina, that took place in the house of Anas, 5 months after the migration to Medina. So you have 45 Sahaba, Muhajirun. They were paired up with 45 Sahaba from amongst the Ansar. So every Muhajir was made the brother of one Ansari. So you have Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu anhu, Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, Abdurrahman bin Auf, Zubair bin Awwam, Uthman bin Talha, Talha bin Ubaidullah, Uthman bin Affan, Talha bin Ubaidullah, Sa'id bin Zayd, Mus'ab bin Umayr. So it's like the who's who of Sahaba. And they're paired up with Kharija ibn Zuhair. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is paired up with Kharija ibn Zuhair. Umar radiallahu anhu is paired up with Itban ibn Malik. And Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah is paired up with Sa'ad ibn Mu'az. And so on and so forth. So you have all of these Muhajirun, approximately 45 of them, all paired up with their counterparts in Medina. And the pairing was something that Rasulullah, because the Prophet, he understood the mentality and psyche of the Sahaba. So he knew exactly who they would mesh with. And this is why Rasulullah paired them up with these particular Sahaba. Now, the Muslims of Medina, the Ansar, to this day, and until the day of Qiyamah, they will remain an example for the ages, because the way they fulfilled the bond of brotherhood with that level of sincerity, it's impossible to find any similar example anywhere in history, like even remotely. It's just impossible to find, because the way they did it, they were completely selfless. They had this selfless behavior, and without this selfless behavior of the Ansar, it would have been impossible for Islam to flourish and for Islam to move forward. So it was really the efforts of the Ansar that led the Muslims forward and that established Islam in Medina. I mean, whether it was land, money, wealth, buildings, they would give it to their migrant brothers. They would give it to their Muhajirun with whom they had made a bond. They took it very seriously. They took this bond extremely seriously, because this was something that Rasulullah had established. So we need to follow what the Prophet had established. So Rasulullah established this brotherhood, then this is what we're going to do. We're going to live as brothers. So some Ansar, and we've heard the story on many occasions, some Ansar, they had, 2 spouses. So they would say to their migrant brother to choose whichever one they wanted. It went to that degree. Whether this happened or not, Allah knows best. But it happened to that degree. They took it so seriously. They would offer that, I will separate from her, so that their Muhajir brother could marry her. It was to that extent. So Anas ibn Malik narrates when the Muhajirun, when they came from Makkah to Medina, they had nothing. It's pretty much the clothing on their back. That's how they came. The vast majority of them came this way, in this manner, that with just the clothing on their back. So they came with literally nothing. So the Ansar, they were people who possessed, they had land, they were farmers. Right? The Muhajirun, they were businessmen, they were tujjar. That's where they had established the Rihlat al-Shita wal-Sayf, the journey of the winter and the summer. So the Ansar, they were people who possessed land, they were people who possessed, date palms, they were cultivators. So the Ansar divided them. They divided the land, gave them to the Muhajirun on the condition that they would give them half of the produce. They would give them half of the produce. So this was a type of income which was coming in, which was beneficial for the Ansar as well as the Muhajirun. And again, without their contribution, and this was yearly. Without this contribution from the Ansar, without that selfless nature that they displayed, it would be impossible for Islam to move forward. And as I mentioned previously, there's no greater praise than Rasulullah ﷺ declaring to the Ansar that if I wasn't from amongst the Muhajirun, then I would be from the Ansar. There's no greater praise than that. And this is one of the reasons why you have, the books of hadith. Right? They've dedicated a specific chapter just on the Ansar, the fada'il of the Ansar, the virtues of the Ansar. Right? Just on the Ansar and their contributions, their dedication, what they did for the cause of Islam. I mean, they adopted Rasulullah ﷺ. They were the ones who brought the Prophet ﷺ into their midst. And it was because of them that Islam grew. And it was because of them that Islam continued to grow. Right? But obviously, it's a two-pronged effort. The Muhajirun, they made effort. Their effort, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the contributions of the Muhajirun and the Ansar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always mentions the Muhajirun first, because they sacrificed everything. They sacrificed everything. They sacrificed their land, they sacrificed their wealth, they sacrificed their family, all so that they can preserve their deen, all so that they can preserve their iman. So the Muhajirun, anyway, the Ansar, as I said, they divided their lands, gave them to the Muhajirun on the condition that they would give them half of the produce each year. The Muhajirun would recompense them by working hard, putting in the time, putting in the labor, even though this was not something that they had any expertise in. Because again, they were businessmen. They were not farmers. They were not farmers. They were not cultivators. Right? This was something that was completely. It was not known to them. Right? This was not something that they were efficient in. But they did whatever they could. Right? So upon seeing the behavior of the Ansar, the Muhajirin said to Rasulullah ﷺ that they had never seen such a people better than them. They even commented that they had never seen anyone better than them. And they were worried. The Muhajirun, they started to get worried that the Ansar, they're going to get all the reward. They're going to get all of it. This was their worry, because they were always competing with each other, right? And this is something good, to compete with one another when it comes to a'mal salihah, when it comes to good deeds. This is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with competing with each other when it comes to good deeds, right? Vying with each other when it comes to good deeds. It's bad and it's a negative thing to compete with one another when it comes to wealth and anything that is dunyawi related. But when it comes to a'mal, right, they were always in competition. That my fellow Muslim, he shouldn't get ahead of me. He shouldn't get ahead of me when it comes to good deeds. And this goes hand in hand. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout the Quran, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ That those who believe and they complemented their belief with good deeds. So this is something that they took very seriously. A'mal salihah, good deeds. So they were worried. The Muhajirun, they became worried that how can we compete with them? They're getting all the reward. We're going to be left without any. So Rasulullah said no. As long as they keep on supplicating for them. If you supplicate for them, you also get a share. You make dua for your fellow Ansari, you will also get a share of those rewards. And so this is an example that when someone does goodwill, when someone does ihsan towards you, then it is the sunnah to make dua for them. It is the sunnah to make dua for them and you partake of that reward. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevate the ranks of the Ansar and the Muhajirun and make them an example for us to follow as well. Now during the time in which Masjid Nabawi was being built, in the month of Rabiul Akhir, Abu Umam, that was his kunya, Asad bin Zurara, he passed away. And this is one of the originals who had pledged allegiance to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that how unfortunate is the death of Asad bin Zurara. The Jews and the hypocrites will say that if he is a prophet, then his companions would not die. They would say things like this. Jews, even in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they were, messed up people. They killed their own prophets, and they made so many attempts to kill Rasulullah ﷺ as well. Right? So this is not something, when you have Jewish people doing this, right? Then what we see today, can you expect anything other than that, what they're doing today? No. And these people, they were killing prophets, they were ready to kill Rasulullah ﷺ as well. So Rasulullah said that how unfortunate is the death of Abu Umama. The Jews and their hypocrites will say that if he is a prophet, then his companion would not die. So the Prophet of Allah said, I have no power from Allah for myself or for my Sahaba, for my companion. This means that Rasulullah ﷺ has no power to stop anyone from dying, anyone from passing away, because this power is only left in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't get to choose when we are born. We don't get to choose when we die. But we get to choose how we live in this world. So we don't have a choice when it comes to coming into this world. We don't have a choice when it comes to leaving this world. But we have a choice as to how we should live in this world. That choice is ours. And it is based on these choices that we make in this world that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to judge us. So after Abu Umama passed away, Asad bin Zurara, the Banu Najjar, these are the relatives of Rasulullah, they got together, they went to the Prophet ﷺ. So Abu Umama was their naqib, right? One of the 12 assistants Rasulullah had appointed during the Pledge of Aqaba, the Pledge of Aqaba in Makkah, in the dead middle of the night. So the Banu Najjar, they asked Rasulullah ﷺ to appoint a person in his place. That, okay, we need a new naqib. Right? We need a new naqib. So Rasulullah said that, look, you're my maternal uncles, and we belong together. From Salma. Right? These are the distant uncles of Rasulullah ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ's great grandmother is Salma. Right? This is the mother of Abdul Muttalib. Right? The mother of Abdul Muttalib. Abdul Muttalib was raised in Medina. So these are uncles of the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ said that, look, you're my maternal uncles, we belong together, I will be your naqib. So Rasulullah did not prefer that he chose one of them over the other. And this became like a great honor for the Banu Najjar, that Rasulullah ﷺ is our naqib. So also in the month of Rabiul Akhir, Kulthum ibn Halam, the host of Rasulullah ﷺ in Quba, he passed away. So when the Prophet of Allah ﷺ arrived in Quba, he was the guest of Kulthum ibn Halam. And he passed away. Now, during this time, the Muslims, they began to settle as a community in Medina, right? Because this is the first time things are, there's peace and there are no issues going on, right? Because in Makkah, they were constantly, the kuffar, they were constantly, harassing them, harming them, doing whatever they could to stop the spread of Islam. So the Muslims in Medina, they finally got to see, peace, some tranquility, and they started to settle as a community. Masjid Nabawi, this was built now. Rasulullah, the building of Masjid Nabawi that had come to a close, that had come to an end, and now the masjid has become the center of all of the religious affairs, as well as the most important thing, which is salawat, the 5 times daily prayer. So Ibn Umar said that when the Muslims arrived in Medina, they used to gather together for salat, and they used to guesstimate. They used to guess the time for the salat, right? Based on, the sun, right? So there was no call for it at that time. There was no such thing as adhan. No such thing as adhan. And naturally, this would cause some people to come early or late, right? It would happen that they would come early. Some of them would come early, some would come late. And this became a little bit difficult. So Rasulullah thought that they must find a way to call the people so that they can congregate at the right time for salat, so that this will facilitate ease for everyone. So the Sahaba, they got together with the Prophet ﷺ and they started to, offer their opinions. Right? This is an indication that the Prophet ﷺ was not an autocrat. He didn't make unilateral decisions. This was not the habit of Rasulullah. He sought the mashwara and he sought the advice of everyone. So he called the Sahaba, that, what is the best way of gathering people to the masjid, that how should we call people for the salah. So one person suggested the naqus, right? The naqus, and this was the way of the Nasara. So the Nasara, this is how they would call people to pray. So the naqus, it's a piece of wood. The naqus is a piece of wood, and it would be struck against another piece of wood, called a clapper, and it would cause a sound. Right? This is called naqus. Yeah.
Just like a drum beating.
Yes. So, and nowadays it would be similar to like a bell. Such as you would have it at the schools and such, which is rung. So as a smaller piece of metal is struck against a larger bell, which causes a sound. I think they still have it in some places, right? Someone else suggested a book or a bat, right? So this was the way of the Yahud, right? The Jewish call to prayer, right? So the book was a horn. Nowadays it's called a shofar. It's called a shofar. It's made of a ram's horn. It's made of, in Arabic it's called book. In English it's called a shofar. So this is blown, in synagogues they use the shofar in Rosh Hashanah and the New Year for the Jewish folk. They call it Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah. That's their New Year. And at the very end of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. This is their belief that Musa alayhi salam granted them deliverance and all of that. This is what they believe. Another person suggested that a fire should be lit in a high place so people would see it and then gather for the salat. And due to the resemblance of these calls to other religions and other cultures, these opinions were not accepted by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the meeting finished. No decision had been made to decide on which is the best method, which is the most effective method. So there was one companion, one Sahabi, who was greatly affected by this concern. Greatly affected. And during this time, this companion was Abdullah ibn Zayd ibn Abd Rabbi. So he saw a dream. And it's interesting that this particular companion, this is the only hadith he narrates. This is the only hadith he narrates. He doesn't narrate any other hadith except the hadith of Azan. The hadith of Azan and Iqamah. Only hadith. So Abdullah ibn Zayd, he sees a dream. So he comes to the Prophet ﷺ the following day and he informs him of his dream. So he said that in his dream, he saw a man pass by him. He's wearing 2 green garments. So the man had a naqus, he had a clapper. And this is the instrument used by the Christians. So Abdullah bin Zayd asked the man, will you sell this naqus to me? So the man, and this is Abu Dawud, it's in Abu Dawud. So the man asked him, what do you want for it? Abdullah bin Zayd said that I will use it to call people for salah. The man then said to him, shall I tell you a method which is even better than this? So Abdullah bin Zayd asked him, okay, what is this method? So the man then said the words of adhan. He called the adhan, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Human voice.
So he called the adhan, the whole adhan. The man then moved a little, recited the iqamah. He first called the adhan, then moved a little bit, called the iqamah, to show that there is a distinction between the two. That there is a separation between the two. Which was the same as adhan, but you have the addition of iqamat as-salat, iqamat as-salat. Right? So Abdullah bin Zayd mentions that when morning came, he went straight, made a beeline to the Prophet ﷺ and informed him of his dream. He was so happy. Right? Imagine his happiness that he saw something that was going to be beneficial for the Muslims. And there's haqq, you can recognize haqq, you can recognize the truth. So when Rasulullah heard what he said that this is a true dream. This is a true dream. And this is one of those instances that a dream was seen and it was taken as wahy. You don't have incidents like this. This is one incident where the dream of a Sahabi was taken as revelation. So this was a approval from the Prophet ﷺ, which means that this is also a type of hadith which can be accepted, provided that. But there's only one example of this. There's only one example of this. So Rasulullah then told, he said that this is a true dream, and then the Prophet ﷺ told Abdullah ibn Zayd that now you teach and tell Bilal the words, because Bilal voice is high. He has a very loud voice. So Bilal radiallahu anh, he called the first ever adhan. So the sound of adhan, it reached the ears of Umar. Right? Umar radiallahu anh was living at a distance from Masjid Nabi. As soon as he heard it, came out of his house, went straight to the Prophet ﷺ and said that I swear by the one who sent you the truth, that I was shown the same thing that Abdullah bin Zayd was shown. Right? So Rasulullah said, well, he beat you to it. he beat you to it. So, and again, then the Prophet ﷺ said, all praise is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All praise is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In a narration in Sunan Ibn Majah, it mentioned that Bilal added the following words to the adhan of Fajr. As-salatu khayrun min an-nawm. So this is also something that Rasulullah approved. He approved it. So it is Bilal radiallahu anh that we have to thank for these words that are recited, that are pronounced, that are called at Fajr. As-salatu khayrun min an-nawm. We should make dua for Bilal radiallahu anh and all of the Sahaba, because all of them contributed something. They all contributed something for the preservation of this deen. So the adhan has since been used every day for every salat around the world. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted, He could have sent it down as revelation to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but He chose the Sahaba. He chose the Sahaba like Abdullah bin Zayd, like Umar radiallahu anh, to show their high status in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the Sahaba, they are also mentioned in previous books. The Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, their status is mentioned in previous book, in the Torah, and in the Zabur and the Injil. This is the Sahaba. This is their rank. That their rank is mentioned in previous celestial book. In Mu'jam Tabrani, it also mentions that Abu Bakr also saw the same dream. So there was multiple Sahaba that saw the same dream. But perhaps Abdullah bin Zayd was living close. Umar and Abu Bakr, they were living a bit. There was some distance between them and Masjid Nabawi. So perhaps this is why Abdullah bin Zayd has this distinction. And this is the only hadith he narrates. There's no other hadith except this one that he narrates. And what better way could there be to call a person towards praying to Allah than the beautiful voices Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with. So each time we recite the words, each time we repeat the words after the mu'adhin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevate the ranks of the companion. And one of the wisdoms, because when you think about the adhan, we always think about that when a newborn, right? When there's a newborn, what do we do? The newborn doesn't understand, right? The newborn doesn't understand. But the command is that we call out the adhan in the right ear and the iqamah in the left ear. What is the wisdom behind that? Because the first words that should be introduced to a newborn, whether they understand, they don't understand, it should be the kalima. It should be the articles of faith. This is the wisdom. This is the wisdom, that these should be the first words. And this is a blessing. This is a blessing for the child, and it is a blessing for the parents as well. Now we'll stop over here, inshallah.
So this happened on the first year?
This happened before the Battle of Badr. Before the Battle of Badr. So yes, first year.
How were the Sahaba mentioned? Previous books? How are they mentioned? In general? Or
Yeah, in general. They are mentioned in general.
What books in there?
So in the Zabur, in the Torah, and in the Injil, they are mentioned that they will be, that these are the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. So they're mentioned as companions, similar to how the apostles of Isa alayhi salam, they're mentioned. So similar to this are the Sahaba.
They're also mentioned scripture there.
Vedas,
Yeah.
Vedas and Puranas. Yeah.
What is it? 10,000 saints that will go into Mecca Sharif or something like
Yeah.
that.
This is not far-fetched. It's not far-fetched. I mean, the thing is, I think even, like ancient